Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Duarte. I'm Executive Director of CORDAP and Distinguished Professor of Marine Science at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. And I welcome you all to the event entitled Harnessing the Power of Society and the Private Sector for Corals. So we have a distinguished set of panelists that I will introduce now, and then they will be making statements along the event. So I'd like to first thank Natalie Gartmann for her kind attendance to the panel. She is the SDG and Impact Manager of Pegasus, Capital Advisory. Then we also have Dr. Maryam Ficoccello, that is the Group Chief Governance Officer of the Red Sea Global, and Ms. Anna Agostinho, which is advisor to the Mirpuri Foundation. Thank you, Anna, for joining us. And then we have also a remote presentation from Cristina Mittermeier, that is the president and founder of SeaLegacy, that she could not join us today, but she will have a statement that is recorded. And then the panelists are close with Mr. Rodi Basso, who's the CEO of the E1 series, and then he will explain himself what the E1 series is and how this is linked to Action for Oceans when he takes the stage. So basically, I'd like to first introduce CORDAP and show a video that communicates what we do and some numbers in terms of the action that we are deploying. So, and then we will continue with the event. So can I have the video, please?
Launched in 2020 by the G20, the Coral Research and Development Accelerator Platform, CORDAP, is the only international organization fully dedicated to funding global research and development for tropical and cold water coral restoration and conservation. We are focused on research and development, building transdisciplinary collaborations, committed to scalability and accessibility. We only fund solutions that can be mainstreamed and accessible to all. And we promote the participation of low and middle income countries. Our work aligns with and contributes to existing global agreements and targets. Positive, practical changes that produce measurable results. This is our goal. Since 2021, CORDAP has collaborated with 103 institutions worldwide from 31 countries, 44% of which are low and middle income countries. We launched our first Coral Accelerator program in 2022 to fund international collaborative teams with impactful ideas in coral conservation and restoration. $18 million worth of funding was awarded. 89 proposals were received in total, 40% led by the lower and middle income countries. 489 applicants, 51% of applicants of which were female. Each full proposal underwent international expert peer review. The result? 14 proposals awarded from 20 countries, 60% of which are from low and middle income countries. We began a series of scoping studies that have brought together more than 70 coral specialists worldwide to assess priority research and development investment goals in key areas to help save the world's corals. We initiated CORDAP study fellowships to build R&D capacity in low and middle income countries. We launched our second Coral Accelerator program, CAP 2023 in September, to continue funding projects worldwide that advance science and technology to conserve and restore corals. And we hosted our first artist in residence, Jana Winterin, as part of our Team Coral initiative that connects art with science. So what's next? You. Join our mission to save the world's corals.
So, thank you. It might seem that we don't need to explain why we need to save corals in the ocean pavilion, but as you know, we have lost more than 50% of the world's coral reef extent, and that was by 2021 when we launched the platform. That was an initiative of the G20 under Saudi presidency, and now includes 16 of the G20 nations, one of them being the European Union. That is not a nation, but a consortium of 28 nations. And by December, we are looking at expanding the platform with 6 new members that are not G20 nations, because the platform is open to all nations. And we're also incorporating a number of organizations as advisors. Unfortunately, the challenges of conserving coral reefs have become even more acute since we launched the platform, because as you know, this summer, or during June to August, then we experienced the most extensive heat wave ever recorded in the ocean. So it's not just in terms of the intensity of the temperature, but also the extent. So previous heat waves only affected 5% of the ocean extent. The one we had this summer was affecting 40% of the ocean extent simultaneously. And unfortunately, and I'm here with the delegation of Bahamas, the Caribbean lost most of the corals that were left. And in Florida, then scientists and the public and citizens rushed to take the corals out of the water and keep them safe in aquaria. So we're really in a situation of emergency. The current knowledge that we have is not sufficient to reverse the prediction that we might lose 75 to 90% of corals by the end of the decade, even if we're able to contain climate warming to 1.5 degrees. So obviously, we're facing what may seem impossible. And at this point, we need research, because science and technology is the only tool we have to redefine the boundaries of the possible. So we showed already what we're doing, but we face the challenge that the scale of the problem, it's massive, and the resources that we have currently for the program is only 1/3 of what we need to have to be able to fast-track the development of research and technology. So we already awarded, as the video indicated, 80 million on grants that are collaborative projects across multiple nations, always including a developing nation. But we received a request for 112 million, so we could only fund about 50% of what the ask was. And this year, in the second call, then the ask was even greater, 160 million. So we really need to rise up the level of resources we have to be able to fund the projects that are deemed to be innovative and investable. And that is a task where we need you all. So we're going to discuss not only what the role of science might be, but what the role of civil society and industry can be in joining this effort to fast-track new technologies that help us save coral reefs while we exert all possible efforts to mitigate climate change. So I would like then to call the first speaker to share some remarks. And I'd like to welcome Natalie Gartmann to share some thoughts on how Pegasus views this challenge. Please welcome Natalie to the stage.
Okay, it's working. Great. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the opportunity. It's really terrifying what you just explained. So I'm happy to be here and explain what we do with the Global Fund for Coral Reefs. Just before I start, for those who don't know us, Pegasus Capital Advisors, we are an impact investing firm based in the US. We were originally founded by our CEO and founder, Craig Colgott, in 1996. He was also one of the co-founders of Apollo, which today is one of the largest investment firms globally. He left Apollo to found Pegasus to really focus his investments to align it with his vision and his mission. And for more than 2 decades, we've been focused now on sustainability, health, and well-being. And also in most recent years, we've also been increasingly focused on climate change mitigation, adaptation, and nature-based solutions, particularly in the Global South, because we believe that's where that's at the frontier markets where we can have the biggest impact. So just in terms of nature-based solutions, I think I have a couple of slides. If we can move the slides. You don't have it? Okay, never mind. Okay, so in terms of nature-based solution, people typically think, especially also in the investor world, because it's a very trendy word at the moment, they think about trees, mangroves, forests, seagrass, wetlands, but not so much about corals. Despite the fact we know how important they are, we know they face extinction, we know how critical they are in terms of food security. They host the most biodiverse marine ecosystems, and they're also for coastal communities. They can absorb, they have the ability to absorb storms, so they're very critical. And despite those facts, we also see that SDG 14, which is the one focused on oceans, is really underfunded. I would have a graph, but we don't have it here, so you can really see how money is currently allocated towards the Sustainable Development Goals and not so much allocated to oceans, coastal communities, including also then coral reefs. I'm very happy that this COP actually saw the launch of the Coral Reef Breakthrough. This was launched by the high-level climate champions, also with ICRI, also with the support of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs and the UN to basically aim to mobilize 12 billion US dollars to close the coral reef funding gap. So really to avoid the extinction of the remaining 50% corals that we have left. So we are very excited that the Global Fund for Coral Reefs is actually already has already mobilized 200 million towards the target. And the objective of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs is to, of course, focus on the protection of the coral reef ecosystems and also the communities that depend on them. By investing into the reduction of the local stressors that currently threaten the reefs. So one of the biggest threats on sustainable fishing, on sustainable coastal development, and also pollution and waste management. So a little bit more about Global Fund for Coral Reefs. It's a coalition that was launched 3 years ago by the Paul G. Allen Foundation, by Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation, the government of Germany. And since its launch, it has really progressed to catalyze more investments, but also investment opportunities and projects. And the coalition is basically made out of two funding mechanisms. One is the investment fund that I'm part of, so Pegasus Capital Advisors, that focus on investing into the reduction of stressors. I mentioned the stressors, so we would invest into sustainable fishing opportunities, sustainable ecotourism opportunities, and also waste management and circular economy. And then the second funding mechanism, it's a grant fund that is managed by our UN partners, but also has a lot of other partners, such as ICRI, such as CORDAP, such as IUCN, TNC, WWF in it to support on the enabling environment. That includes capacity building efforts, technical assistance for investment, for SME development, and so forth. It also includes support for policy making and also most critically science research and development, because we want to be able to allocate the money where it's most helpful to protect the reefs. So just to make it a little bit more tangible, one of the investments that we made this year is into a company called Carbon Wave. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the sargassum issue in Latin America and Caribbean, but sargassum is a brown algae. It's a healthy amount of sargassum of the brown algae would be healthy for the marine biodiversity and ecosystem, but the amount that is currently covering up the beaches, the coast, it's really harmful because sargassum, it leaks arsenic, it also releases methane. Once it decomposes, it also releases sulfates. So it can be really harmful for biodiversity, but also for the people living there. So the company that we invested into, they managed to collect it from the beach, but then they found a technology to process it into biostimulants, emulsifiers. They're also working now on vegan leather, made out of sargassum. They do 3D printing, and they're also working on a new plastics replacement material with sargassum. So a lot of new applications, which not only displace the fossil fuels that we would use for those applications, but also to make use of the sargassum that is now considered waste. So I leave it on like this, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more in the conversation.
So thank you, Natalie, for sharing the efforts of Pegasus. And just two points I would like to make. First of all, we are working on a coalition between ICRI, the UN Global Fund for Coral Reefs, and CORDAP. And the way these three pillars work, and we are coordinated by the UN Environmental Program, is that we at CORDAP produce the advanced science and technology that may be able to do what we think is impossible, because with the current techniques, as we saw in Florida, all of the restoration projects that have been done in the past were actually dead. So we cannot really continue to do coral conservation and restoration with the same tools that we had, because we will lose the investments and we will lose the corals. So we provide new technologies. The UN Global Fund for Coral Reef then deploys investment to be able to apply the technologies and the conservation actions on the ground. And ICRI shares best practices and also helps develop policy to be able to conserve coral reefs. And the second element that I'd like to highlight is the importance of corals as natural capital. So there's been a lot of, as Natalie mentioned, a lot of emphasis in terms of ocean on blue carbon, which actually is a term that I coined. But that has led to positive action, but also carbon-centric approach to marine ecosystems. So now we're working on taking the next step, which is rather than talk only about carbon, then emphasize the value of natural capital because of the many benefits we receive from nature. And definitely, coral reefs are hugely important as natural capital. So with this, I'd like to move on to the next speaker, that is Mr. Rodi Basso. Welcome, Rodi. So Rodi Basso is the CEO of E1, and I'm actually the chief scientist of E1. So Rodi is going to tell us what E1 is about and what it can do also for the fight to conserve not only corals, but also marine ecosystems. Over to you, Rodi.
Thank you, Carlo. Thank you, everyone, for inviting this panel and actually in this beautifully designed pavilion. I'm Rodi Basso. I'm an aerospace engineer. I fast forward my background just to give context also to all the rest and how E1 is born. I started my career in NASA, at the NASA Goddard nearby Washington, D.C., working on data processing on satellite, on microsatellites. But then I switched into what I still love, which is the combination of sport and technology. So I had a career in Formula One, Ferrari and Red Bull, and then moved into technology supply of high voltage architecture, which means propulsion, battery. I developed the battery for Formula E in Generation 2. This is where I met today's business partner, Alejandro Agag, who's the only human being who has developed 3 championships in 10 years, and actually is working on the 4th. And then after this experience in McLaren, when I was managing director of 350 engineers working on high voltage architecture, low voltage, which means onboard intelligence, and data intelligence, so tools on how to interpret the data and in a good way. And actually in McLaren, I started working on the data for the entertainment, so how to explain more and more what's happening in a race. So all this forward is to say that, you know, E1 is my idea that I took to Alejandro with the clear intention of using my passion for water and coastal area and lifestyle in the coastal areas. Carlos keeps reminding me that more than 50% of people live in the coastal area in the world, and so it is something that we have to really take care of. I want to address this passion for this and for the technology in general applied into the sport to develop a new platform. In general, sport is seen as a marketing and communication platform, but we want to build an execution platform. So in these slides, I would like to share with you how we develop this execution. And this actually coincides with our sustainability strategy. We start from the events and logistics. We try not to use aircraft, and we won't use aircraft to ship our marketing assets and boats. We want to build a number of set of power boats depending on where we're going to be racing. So we are now just actually yesterday shipped the first set to Saudi, Jeddah, where we will have the first ever race on the 2nd and 3rd of February. And as soon as we build 2-3 events in US or on the Asian side, we will build another set of power boats in order to reduce the shipping and the associated pollution, and also to keep activating E1 as a corporate possibility, but also as academy for athletes locally. We are working on also be ISO certified for season 2, because of course we need season 1 to learn and measure and improve, so that our events will be zero impact. And so this is, and well, on the logistics side, we have partnered with a German startup who has developed a marks system that doesn't use anchors. So they have actually a better precision. They are moved by electric motors, and through GPS, they keep the position without having to create any damage into the seabed. Of course, sport is a symbolic way to show that there are other ways to approach everyday's life. And of course, the scale is not what we need, but for sure we are an incredible, and we want to build a technology platform, and this is the second point, where we can actually show that what is possible. Starting from the boat, there is a jewel of transferred by, and actually there wants to be a meeting point between power boating, sailing, and motorsport. From motorsport and automotive, we inherit all the electric and electronic part. From power boating, of course, the natural naval architecture, the materials, and from sailing, the foils. The foils has been a great opportunity to redesign the boat, because the sustainability, which is now a very controversial term in many forums, I rather call it a race to efficiency. So this is where all the engineers, but also the people trained in economy, the definition of both topics is really very much about how you use in an efficient way the available resources. And so by using the foils, we managed to raise the boat after 10 knots and to accelerate much better and have a battery which is only less than 20% of the total weight of the boat itself. The blue impact is what is really led by Carlos and by his science. And, you know, while we are developing this, for sure it's a very innovative project, but we don't want to innovate only on logistics and technology, but also on the business model. As an engineer, I believe the sponsorship industry is the most boring industry in the world, because you approach someone, you know, a company or a group, and they ask you media reach and KPIs and all these sort of things, and then they complain afterwards because they don't believe in it. But they know that there's no science about this data. You know, there is an economy of agency working on and delivering you whatever you want to believe. So honestly, for me, data is religion. Okay, data is something that needs to be believable. And so with the blue impact, we want to associate with the most credible scientists in the world, and we want to make sure that what we offer to partners, again, is an execution program where we raise funds to hire local people, get trained, get a job to actually implement the science of Carlos, of course, develop the due diligence to understand locally on a large scale what we can do with marine biology and technology in order to approach it on a larger possible scale, and then develop these projects in the areas of interest. Are we succeeding? No, because incredibly, I mean, the algorithms in the world of sponsorship and in the world of finance are not, and the way of thinking, the mindset, are not really getting what we are trying to do. And so actually this will be part of my future challenge from now on while we are launching the championship. Seat engagement, of course, is incredibly important. Business-wise, seat is our most important revenue stream in the first 3-4 years. And so we want to make sure that we go in iconic places where there are other issues, Venice, Miami, Hong Kong, or solutions. So wherever you can find hubs of technology or like-minded people that can deliver solution to the world. Because we can't forget as a sport that we need to be a machine of optimism. Sport is about inspiring. Sport is about giving hope, pushing the boundaries. And this is also why our team owners are incredible celebrities of the liking of Tom Brady, Rafa Nadal, Didier Drogba, all joining E1 because of the competitive aspects, but also because of the impact that we are trying to build all together. So this is why I strongly believe, and I will keep working on sport as a conduit of these important messages. I have to say, this is my last day in COP28, and I really, really enjoy meeting incredible people and listening to great inputs. I will go back home with a few targets and challenges. First one, I reckon sport as an industry and as a movement should have more saying in these incredibly important international forums, and should cover a different position in the spotlight of what's achievable and how you can achieve things. I keep reminding myself that more than 2,000 years ago, we were stopping wars to allow Olympic Games. This was happening in the Greece. Now we do the opposite. So this only for me should be a KPI of how much we are losing completely the direction, and we need to re-steer the boat to a completely different direction and targets. The other one that I have, I mean, I love innovation, I love new things and challenge paradigm. I want to really meet up and work together with people from finance who wants to rewrite the rules of what a KPI is. So what if the KPI and your financial value and assets are related to how much you restore the coral reef, the coastal areas, and and the value of your company, but not in a virtual way like has been awkwardly trying to be done recently, but how we can reinvent the right mechanism, algorithms, and mindset in order that the finance world contributes and drive the change in a very effective way, so that we also help CORDAP in achieving the huge challenges of filling the financial gaps of what's needed to save our planet and save our lives. So this is what we will try to do. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll look forward to enjoying the rest of the panel.
Thank you. So a couple of thoughts on what Rodi has mentioned. First, yesterday actually we had with Rodi 2 other panels on sports, which is, I believe, the first panels on sports in a COP conference. And in fact, one of the panelists was Rick Fox, that was captain of Boston Celtics and the LA Lakers for several years. And then he's been down in games, decisive games, where he was 10, 15, 20 points down, and the clock was saying 2 minutes to win, right? And they came back and won the game. So I think we are in that situation with the climate problem and saving corals, and we need to learn from how do you come back from an adverse situation as a team planet, and solve the problem. So we're going to be pushing in next COPs for more presence of sports on our conversation. But on the Blue Impact Program, then at least 2 of the cities that E1 is going to raise on the first season are coral cities. Like Jeddah is not only bordered by corals, they are not in the best possible state in the shoreline, so we need to conserve and restore them. But even the city itself is built on coral stone. So definitely a coral city where coral restoration is going to be a main driver of the Blue Impact Program. So with this, I'd like to welcome also the next speaker, Maryam Ficoccello, that is the Chief Governance Officer of Red Sea, to share some thoughts on how the Red Sea is contributing to not only climate action, but also rebuilding natural capital in the ocean. Over to you, Dr. Maryam.
Thank you, Carlos, and good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I'll come closer. There you go. Thank you, Carlos, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm very pleased to be here. For those of you that don't know Red Sea Global, the company I work for, it's one of Saudi Arabia's new companies or new projects that are looking into diversifying the Saudi economy away from oil. We're about 6 years old only, but we've opened our very first resort. We focus on tourism. So Saudi Arabia is diversifying its economy into 4 new sectors that didn't exist before: tourism, culture, entertainment, and sports. And so I'm very pleased that Rodi is with us here today because, and very pleased to see, as a sailor myself, that we're hosting your next race, I believe, in February in Jeddah, my hometown. So very exciting things happening in Saudi. But away from the sports arena, Red Sea Global is a tourism destination. We focus only on seaside tourism, so seaside resorts. As I said, we opened our first resort on the 1st of November, and we're opening our second one in January, and then our third one in February 2024. One of our main commitments is that we are inspired by nature, but led by science. That's always been kind of our target. And so, and one of our main commitments is that we have a 30% net conservation benefit by 2040. And what that means is that we have to give back in many aspects of our developments to nature and to preserving our natural capital. But one of those areas is coral. And so we've been building nurseries. We have a number of floating nurseries in our destinations. We recently also launched a few days ago here at COP that we announced Corallium, which is our marine research center in our destination called Amala, in partnership with CORDAP. And our focus there is really just to invest in science around corals and trying to kind of bring and restore a lot of the lost corals in the Red Sea. As you all know, and I think the statistic that was mentioned earlier today is that 50% of the world's corals have been lost, unfortunately. We also know that 1% of the ocean sea floor is covered in coral, but that 1% actually supports 25% of all marine life. So it's really important that we do restore and try and save corals to the extent possible. And we hope at Red Sea Global that we are a force for good in that space as well. I'll pause here and perhaps maybe hear more, and I look forward to a conversation with everyone in the audience today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maryam. And in fact, I've been following the journey of the Red Sea Global from the onset, and I've been very inspired to see how public and private investment on development and new industries like regenerative tourism can actually power conservation and restoration with investments that are very hard to deliver from governments or from philanthropy. So I think it's a very good model to follow. Please visit the website to know more. Then I'd like to welcome our last speaker that is in attendance. That is Ana Agostinho, that is advisory to the Mirpuri Foundation, which has had a long commitment with coral conservation and action. Over to you, Ana.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me to be today here. I think we're all aware of the problem. But it's good to know in some way, after all of the you said, that we still have a half full glass perspective of this. We are looking to solutions. We are looking at the problem at the same time providing solutions, and that's what's important, at least when we're doing a conference such as this, that we are able to provide hope and that we are able to provide the world with solutions that will benefit and will save in the future or the future of the next generations. That's what we hope. I don't have a presentation, so I'll make it very brief. The Mirpuri Foundation is a family foundation, a Portuguese-based foundation created by a businessman and a philanthropist, and mostly focused on conservation and art as well. Marine conservation, in particular coral reefs, has been one of the main priorities of the foundation since the beginning. And because of that, and we mentioned race and we mentioned game, I like those words. I think that unlike E1, where one of your teams will win and the others will lose, this is a race that we cannot lose, and this is a race or a game that we need to play the game together and we need to race together. This is not a competition. We need to work collaboratively in order to achieve our results and the outcomes it is for coral reef conservation. So the Mirpuri Foundation has been doing that since the beginning. It's been partnering with other organizations, international organizations, to create environmental campaigns and projects all over the world. And I feel like we are a little bit connected to everyone here because we have helped and supported ICRI and the Global Fund for Coral Reefs as well we are using sport and the ocean race, particularly you are sponsoring the ocean race. You're using sport as well as a global platform, a huge billboard to raise awareness on the environment and coral reef conservation. And we are also becoming members of CORDAP very soon. So I think that we're all together in this, and that's the whole point of organizations, is to be proud of each other, to be proud of the work that we're doing, and help each other to go further and to do more.
Thank you so much, Anna. Well, you can start see a common thread with sports being something that unites the world and promotes action. And in fact, in the ocean race, one of the vessels sponsored by the Mirpuri Foundation was actually painting the sail with a coral reef, and they also painted a 380 Airbus with a coral reef. That was traveling around the world. But I think it's very important to work together, and in fact, Rodi referred to the Olympic Games that put wars in a pause, and in fact, that was the point, to rather than fight on the battleground, then we fight on the stadium and compete. And the world competition has been brought by Anna, and in fact, the world competition has been misunderstood. The roots are com, which means together, and pedos, the foot. So it's actually competition means literally walking together. It doesn't mean I'm going to beat you. It means we walk together, and we run together, and we do things together. So I think we need to go back to that meaning of competition and doing things together, as we are doing those now, to be able to achieve our goal, because if we move in all directions, then we won't be able to face this challenge that we are addressing now. So we will now show a video message recorded by Cristina Mittermeier, that is the founder of SeaLegacy, and in my opinion, one of the most talented marine life photographers in the world. So over to Cristina.
My name is Cristina Mittermeier. I'm a photographer. I'm a conservationist. I am a diver, and I'm the co-founder of SeaLegacy. It is my pleasure and honor, a real privilege and a fun one too, to be part of this panel with friends, with colleagues that I admire. And it is a real shame that I couldn't make it to Dubai to be with you in person, but I thank you for indulging me and having me on video. I really appreciate it. Coral reefs have been called the rainforest of the sea. They occupy less than 1% of the ocean floor, but they are the home to 25% of all marine species. That's about 1 million different species of creatures in the ocean. And they are important because they support an economy that's worth $375 billion annually. So it is a very important part of the economy of about 100 coastal countries, and it supports about 1 billion people with tourism, with fishing, with coastal protection. They're pretty important ecosystems. The IPCC says that if temperatures increase by 1.5 degrees centigrade, which we're on track to doing, we are going to lose 70 to 90% of coral reefs. If temperatures increase to 2%, we will lose all the reefs. And we are scheduled to get there by mid-century. So stop and think about that for a second. This is just 20 to 30 years away. The consequences for humanity are going to be catastrophic. Losing about 1 million species in the ocean is going to devastate local economies that depend on tourism, and it's going to collapse coastal fisheries. This is going to impact about 1 billion people. And importantly, about 200 million people depend on coral reefs to stop the battering of hurricanes and storms on the coastline. So it's going to displace a huge number of humans from where they live today. Perhaps the most devastating effect of disappearing coral reefs is that algae will take over where once we had thriving ecosystems. Algae and microbial algae produce slime. So the ocean is going to become slimier, and it's going to become the home of jellyfish. Importantly, the ocean will lose its ability to produce the oxygen that we breathe today. The threats to coral reefs are many, and they include bottom trawling, which shockingly is still allowed in many countries, including Canada. Pollution, not just plastic pollution, but fertilizers, sediment, sugar industry. It's a massive cause of pollution that's destroying coral reefs in many places. But the most important threat to coral reefs is warming temperatures, climate change. Full stop. there's no bigger threat to coral reefs than a warming ocean. What needs to happen to turn this around is twofold. We need to make serious investments in conservation. The largest and richest coral reefs that remain on planet Earth, like the Great Barrier Reef, remain because they have been protected since the 1970s, and conservation is expensive, so countries need to prioritize the conservation of existing reefs. Secondly, we need to invest in the restoration of the coral reefs that have been devastated. Another incredibly expensive, labor-intensive, and time-consuming activity, but one that is absolutely necessary to maintain the resilience of the reefs that are still alive. And finally, we need to stop emissions. I'm going to let the other panelists tell you the many ways in which emissions are still an enormous threat to humanity today. But make no mistake, carbon is the largest pollutant and the biggest threat to the ocean and to coral reefs. So the role of governments and corporations is pretty clear. They need to get their act together today to stop emissions. We as citizens are tired of watching delegates from all over the world go to the conference of the parties and get nothing done. We are expecting that governments are going to come with a clear and bold and ambitious agenda to get the train back on the track. We have no more time to waste. If we were on an airplane, this is the point where the cabin crew would be telling us to brace for impact. But what can general citizens do? Well, the conservation and environmental movement is starved for funding, and we all are passionate about many causes. But I'm going to say that the most important thing that we can do as individuals, in addition to looking at how much we consume and what we consume, is to over-bias our donations for the environment. Find conservation organizations, local environmental causes, global environmental causes, and donate generously, because humanity's future depends on it. In the 30 years that I have spent as a diver, marine biologist, and photographer, I've had the marvelous experience of seeing and spending time in thriving, healthy coral reefs. But those are becoming more and more rare. Many times now, when I go back to places where I used to dive, all I see is rubble, dead ecosystems where you cannot even find fish. I don't want to see that happening in the last few coral reefs. And it is serious, it is dire. With El Nino coming this year, scientists around the world are bracing themselves to watch another massive bleaching episode that's going to be translated into the massive loss of coral reefs. For most people, they just imagine themselves on the beach and they're going to go snorkeling on the reef, and the consequence of the loss is not clear. But this is a clear and present danger for humanity. We needed to be acting 10 years ago, 30 years ago. But why don't we start acting today?
So I'd like to thank Cristina for her contribution, but also, since we're in the Ocean Pavilion, I'd like to make one point, because I've heard that maybe 20 times around the conference, and I hear that every other conference, that the ocean provides the oxygen we breathe. That is not scientifically correct. So the ocean produces 50% of the oxygen in the biosphere, but all of that oxygen is consumed by the marine life itself. So there is actually no net gain in oxygen coming from the ocean. Now there is, because the warming of the oceans are releasing oxygen because the solubility is decreasing, but we're actually breathing oxygen that was produced in the great oxidation event more than 1,000 million years ago. If we seal the ocean, we'll continue to breathe. There are many reasons why we need to conserve the ocean, but because it provides the oxygen we breathe, that's not one. So let's get it correct. So I would like to throw one question first to Natalie, but I would like to invite everybody in the panel to contribute, which is that one of my worries with the conservation movement, whether it's corals or blue carbon or something like that, is that organizations that are in the conservation space, because financial resources are so limited, they believe that conservation and ocean action is a zero-sum game, meaning that the resources that go your way are resources that I'm going to lose. And then I often see organizations undermining each other to compete for resources. So in this case, they're not competing, working together. They're competing, undermining each other, and they're playing a zero-sum game that eventually hurts us all. So how can we shift the needle from a zero-sum game to one where we add or even multiply? So Natalie, can you take the floor first?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think as part of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs Coalition, we really work really hard to mobilize more capital and build this ecosystem and integrating into the existing ecosystem to bring more investors in it. And this includes the ecosystem, different players, the entrepreneurs we work with, project developers, other investors, philanthropies. Also, we see more and more corporates they want to do impact investing, the mainstream investors, policymakers, scientists, NGOs, again, to make sure we allocate resources correctly. And then I think our role is also to kind of understand the local needs, the stressors, I mean, climate change, but then also the local stressors on the reefs. That can also be pollution and other factors, and then map the solutions and understand what is the funding need and what is the solution, because then we are not competing. I don't think at all. And we see there are different type of fundings, including our investment fund, that focus more on the solutions that are scalable, replicable, very commercially focused, because we know that if we want to get the big amount of capital, the mainstream investors, we have to make it work. They want to see environmental, social, but also financial returns. But then there's a lot in the ecosystem, other investors, more philanthropies that are willing to absorb more risks, for instance, that are also willing to take a little bit less of returns, and those then can be allocated to the earlier stage opportunities. And some of what we see, coral restoration, businesses, at the moment, they not necessarily have the business model that we would need from the investment fund of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, but in the ecosystem, there are other investors that can provide the grants in the beginning, to scale it, to bring it to a stage where then we can invest. And we see many, many great opportunities, and just also thinking we have the more restoration-focused activities. But right now, I mean, there are thousands of companies that do unsustainable fishing that really are harmful for the reefs. And those are not like the small ticket sizes. Those are mid-size or even large ticket sizes where we can come in as an investor and change what they do and transition them to more sustainable practices, or scale those that already do it sustainably. So there's also in terms of early stage, smaller sizes to mid-size, growth capital. There's different opportunities.
Thank you so much. Any other views on how can we do that, Dr. Maryam?
So we're hearing a lot of kind of disgruntlement, I think, from everyone at COP again, about how little has been achieved. And I really think that, I mean, in agreement with everyone else, and especially what Anna, you said about collaboration and sportsmanship, I don't think that we can rely and wait for governments to do anything any longer. I think it's on the public, on the private sector, the sports leaders around the world, the third sectors to come together and push for the change, because I think we're much more agile. We can get things done faster. All we want from governments is to one day maybe put in the right regulations, but I don't think we should be expecting more than that, to be honest, from them. We should be just moving on forward without them. And the way to move forward is partnerships between all sectors, and make it commercial, make it competitive, because that's where the excitement is. And we have new generations. We have a huge amount of young people that want this change. And unless we work together and just push on forward, rather than wait for the governments to do something, I don't think we'll see a lot of change. So that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Fully concur with that view. Rodi or Anna, would you like to add to that element? So then, Rodi, you mentioned that one of the strategies of E1 to create engagement is through have team owners that are celebrities, and you mentioned Didier Drogba, Rafa Nadal, Tom Brady. There are many more. Yep. But in which way you think that this leadership, they can provide leadership that is going to, for instance, contribute to make the Blue Impact Program, which aims at restoring the marine ecosystems of coastal systems at scale, how they can contribute to that effort?
So first of all, the origin of this idea was within the business strategy. We, from motorsport, Formula 1, Formula E, and so on, we moved into powerboating. There are no famous drivers in powerboating. There are no famous character like Adrian Newey for whoever follows the motorsport, and other, Ross Brown and many others. So we thought there was the case to change this strategy of powerboating and approach celebrities. Actually, out of the 8 celebrities that we have, 2 came to us because they were interested. Of course, they also saw the previous celebrities joining, and so they like, again, the competition and everything. But this is an opportunity. And they also like the idea of contributing to something that is impactful and meaningful. Today, more than ever, sport athletes are the best way to communicate and influence positively. Well, it depends on how you use them, but to influence the mass of people. We are a startup or post-startup company. We have only one investor, PIF. But I'm saying this because, you know, our media reach, of course, will start from February the 2nd onwards. So we don't have a big media reach. But if I consider the followership of all the celebrities that we have already on board, we can reach every day of the race weekend 500 million people. And for a startup like us, for a brand new platform, not established sport at all, this is very powerful. And we got a conversation with our 2 sport legends. If we get them on board, we may double the followership. So it is important, and they're all keen, again, on after such a incredible career and also generating a very good wealth position for self. They all are united by the idea of giving back. We will leverage their discipline. They want to apply also in business and into the sustainable projects, their reach and their inspiration in order to move as much as possible, you know, the people emotion, because sport is a lot about emotion, it's about life, and try to drive the change. But I would like to connect these points and all the others to the previous question that you had, because I think that the next big challenge is the finance world and how we, or the private sector, the world of business, and how we then you know, rewrite the rules in order to facilitate and enable all the inspiration that we are trying to deliver.
Thank you, Rodi. So as chief scientist of A1, I've been working with some of the celebrity owners to discuss with them and inform them about the Blue Impact program. And I would like to share just two points on how committed they are. So Rafael Nadal is born in my island where I live, where I have my family home, Mallorca. He's an islander, and he's seen the ocean around the island deteriorate, like, unfortunately, every other ocean. And then now he's committed to use his reach and his values to contribute, to give back to the ocean. And in fact, you might be surprised to learn what Rafa Nadal does when he competes. He's actually coming back in Brisbane to competition. In between competition, what he does to relax is he watches over and over and over the films of Jacques Cousteau. And he's fascinated about marine life. He wants to learn more, and he wants to communicate what he gets to learn to his followers. The second example that I will give is Didier Drogba. Didier is still, I believe, the top scorer of Chelsea in football, but he was the captain of the national team of Côte d'Ivoire. When he was playing to qualify for the World Cup for the first time, it was a decisive match where Côte d'Ivoire, winning, will qualify for the first time. Then his country was in civil war. And he's a deeply spiritual, religious person, and seeing his fellow countrymen and women killing each other really impact him dearly. So they actually went on and won the game, and Côte d'Ivoire qualified for the World Cup for the first time. And we have seen when, all of us have experience in seeing when our national teams win a game that seems unlikely, is a moment to celebrate. It's a moment that brings everybody together. So the national TV came to the locker room to interview Didier. And what Didier did just in that moment, he put himself on his knees and begged his fellow countrymen and women to get together and stop killing each other. Right? That segment was reproduced in the news lunchtime, dinner time, during several months. And at the end of some months, then women, not the men, they came together from both sides of the border, and they said, that's it, we're stopping killing each other, we're coming together. But I've been working with Didier on a strategy to reforest Côte d'Ivoire that has lost 95% of forest, because Didier realized that in Africa, much of the war is because of depleted natural capital, and people are suffering, not able to meet their needs. So then they enter into violent disputes, eventually war. So he wants to reforest his country, but he wants to reforest every mangrove in the ocean, because he believes that a healthy nature brings healthy societies and brings peace. So that's an example of how committed they are. I haven't been able to work with every one of them, but I hope to have that opportunity over the coming months. So Anna, just to conclude, I would like to ask you, so you've tried, Mirpuri Foundation has tried for a long time to promote awareness and also conservation action in corals. What works and what doesn't?
Well, I think that we're talking here about funding, but also about behavior change. And I have to say that sports is a unique platform to raise awareness and to lead, to inspire for change, to lead to behavior change. And as you were saying so well, it's up to us ultimately, and up to us even as individuals to actually make a change, and to it's our way of changing our day-to-day life that will ultimately lead to policy making and to change regulations of the government. So it's the power of the public, of the civil society, of the public, of the private sector, of philanthropies together that will lead to those regulations, even if they don't provide the money to go along with it. So yes, I think that behavior change is really important, and the first campaign around sailing that we did with the Ocean Race in 2017, 2018, we had a clear idea of impact after the race. So we were aiming and tackling ocean plastic pollution at the time, and we did see an impact of change at every stopover, of regulations changing as well. So it all comes together as inspiring for change is something that we all must do as individuals and as organizations. When it comes to funding, I think that for every single marine conservation effort in terms of funding, one requires tailor-made approach, I would say. Leverage, we're leveraging differently funding coming from the government or from a private sector or philanthropy. It's completely different. But they do have one thing in common, which is knowledge. So no one is going to fund something they don't understand. And that is key for me, and that's basic for every single investment. It needs to be simple, it needs to be relatable, we need to explain the problem, and we need to provide a solution. That's the only way that works if we're reaching out to an organization and asking for funding. At the same time, I think that we do need science for that, we do need research, we need data, and we need to make it understandable for that. That investment is simple and risk-free-ish, at least at the moment. You were talking about as well as how does it work, and how do we make it work? I think that we need to tailor-make proposals, campaigns, presentation. We need to go local. We need to understand that there's a unique platform for every single organization, and there's a unique strategy for every organization to fund a specific project. So we need to find more about that organization. We need to understand, we need to go local, and we need to make sure that we are able to provide a solution that's effective, whether it's a specific project, whether it's an environmental campaign to raise awareness, whatever it is, it needs to be simple, it needs to be concrete, and it needs to be effective.
Thank you so much, Anna. So with this, we run out of time, but before we ask the panelists to stand up to receive a round of applauses, then I would like to announce that E1 and CORDAP are signing an agreement document. So I would like to invite Rodi to come and sign with me. I already pre-signed the documents, so now you only need to sign in those two places. Thank you, Rodi.
Very glad.
Please stand up for to be